Now, I do have some audio I do want to play for people before we kind of get into this topic. So this was from The Athletic, their beat reporter. I believe his name is Fred Catt. So this is what he had to say about the Detroit Pistons picking up Paul Reed and Jalen Duren.
My colleague, Shams Charania, just reported that the Pistons are claiming him off waivers, which is a weird transaction by the Pistons, honestly.
New front office, still a lot of weirdness out of that organization.
Really, really weird Pistons transaction. I talk about the Pistons way more than I should on this podcast. That's a weird. I keep thinking, you know what? That's maybe a foreboding Pistons transaction. That's like I've got like the Windhorse meme going right now because they've been definitely taking calls on Isaiah Stewart, and I think they're more open to moving Duren than like you would expect from a promising 20-year-old center who they picked in the first round 2 years ago. So I wonder,
by the way, I had heard from Knicks people at the time that they really liked him in the draft.
Yeah, and they traded the pick that became him away.
So it gets you got you room for Jalen Brunson though. So
and Isaiah Hartenstein. Everybody forgets it got you room for Jalen Brunson and Isaiah Hartenstein. Yeah. So it ended up working out. But with the Pistons, I wonder if that's why they're after a center. But still, $7.7 million for a third string center when you're the Detroit Pistons. I know you have room, but they're doing some weird stuff.
Yeah,
they're doing some weird stuff.
So usually I wouldn't play audio from a podcast, but him being a national reporter, kind of being with like the same level as like a James Edwards, like those athletic guys hear stuff. So my question to you is, obviously we heard the Knicks stuff, but I also read an article from one of your colleagues over at Clutch Points that the Pelicans are also interested in Jalen Duren. So what are your thoughts about just the trade talk surrounding him right now?
I mean, it kind of makes sense. Monty built him up a lot when he got hired, calling him a potential top 10 player. We kind of saw what his ceiling could look like when he came out of Memphis. I still really like him as a player. He's super young. He's still kind of learning and taking some time. And I kind of think to an extent we're seeing a lot of the effects of like the past couple seasons kind of take hold right now. So like his ankle injuries slowed him down a lot. Not being able to play with Cade much his first year didn't really get him a lot of time to get familiar. His defense is still really a problem. Like he's really, really struggling with the ability to defend without fouling, especially as the rim protector that they're hoping that he can be. But JB spoke to wanting to unlock his potential and looking at him as the guy that can be that rim protector for the Pistons. I understand why these other teams like the Pelicans, who are really just a big away maybe from being the contenders that they want to be, Knicks in the same exact position. I understand why those two teams would want to look at a guy like him in his rookie deal, but yeah, he's got a lot of room where he needs to grow. He's kind of in the same position where, like, because people were asking him to, like, you know, oh, if only he puts a jumper together, or, oh, if he can learn how to, you know, work on a few moves on the outside or be a spot-up shooter. You don't need him to do that. Like, I remember in the summer league, he's bringing the ball up off transition and, like, trying to orchestrate your offense. Like, I don't want to see that. It's not bad. I understand why you're trying it in summer league, but he needs to be working on having his back to the basket and imposing that athleticism and that size. Like, I just thought they were working on a lot of things that he should not have been working on last season. Like, the potential is there. I love the upside with him and Cade. If Cade sees a second of him being open, he's going to throw him the ball and get that lob up. Like, that's Cade's IQ. He sees that. So I understand why these other teams are interested in him. I'm hoping the Pistons don't pull that plug yet because there is so much help that has been added around him where now he can just be that man in the middle and you can see him play as a different player compared to what we saw last season under Monty. I get why they're interested. Pistons should not be pulling the trigger on him yet. Not yet.
I agree. To your point, you saw him try to initiate DHO offense, which that's fine, but Jalen Duren is going to have to learn how to run a DHO offense, and that's going to take more than some summer league. That's going to take more than a season. I mean, it took Andre Drummond 2.5 seasons to learn it, and he got pretty good at it. But that's a very hard offense to learn, especially at the center position. Like the only two centers that I think can get away with it is Sabonis and Nikola Jokic. Like those are the two centers when you see them, bring the ball up the court a little bit and run the offense through them through dribble handoffs. Like it works really well, but I don't really think that's something that Jalen Duren needs to really worry about. To your point, I think he needs to be in that, the low block area. To your point, what JB said is he'd like to have him be, 10 to 15 feet, like away from the rim to kind of set picks, work down low, not the top of the key, stretching the floor, initiating offense. Obviously, he wants the guards to do that, which I think is smart. But to the trade talks, here's my thing. When I look at the Knicks and I look at the Pelicans, I think they're both in the same position. They both lost contributing centers, and they're trying to get a new center to fill the void. The Knicks lost Isaiah Hartenstein, got the bag, and it's actually funny because Jalen Brunson took a lot less than they probably could have. They probably could have re-signed Hartenstein.
Yes.
Like that's wild.
Yeah.
And JV going to Washington for as cheap as he went, I don't know, man. Like the Pelicans couldn't offer him $30 million over the last 3 years. Like that's pretty crazy. $10 million a year for him is insanely cheap, I think, for the production that you're getting, given like the type of player he is. But I think the way I look at it, it's two playoff teams that are looking for a cheap center that's on a rookie deal that they don't have to worry about paying right now.
Right.
And when you look at Duren, you look at Stewart, you look at Paul Reed. Outside of Stewart, because Stewart's like $16 million, like Paul Reed and Duren are under $10 million. That's the way I look at it. And I can understand why the Knicks beat reporters from The Athletic are kind of saying, no, that's kind of weird that they're looking to add Paul Reed. As Pistons fans, we didn't see it as weird. We were actually kind of like saying like, okay, go get a rim protector, go get a backup center, because that's what we needed. Because if Isaiah Stewart was going to be your backup center, I think a lot of us would have a lot of questions to like how he'd be used, because I think he could play backup center, just not every day.
Right. He's very situational based on his size, based on his skill set. Like it's just, if anybody, like again, you spoke about Isaiah Stewart also being on the block. They're fielding calls for him as well. Like to me, that would be somebody I'd kind of be okay with them having to take that move from, because I just feel like if you're wanting to have guys who give you more versatility on both sides of the ball, because I think Stewart's a good defender. He's one of the few guys who can keep Giannis like a little bit at bay when he comes to see the Pistons. I love the way he plays against him. But offensively, he's a one-trick pony. Like we saw him stand outside. Defenses were not respecting him, even when he was making the shots. And that's not going to fly. You need a shooter that can draw attention away from other people. You need a creator or a scorer that can also put the ball on the ground and maybe go get his own shot. So I feel like he's the one that really is like kind of at limbo of where his future could be with his team. I thought that contract was way too premature. And having Duren now, I just feel like he makes way more sense for what they're trying to accomplish. Another thing that kind of added to all that hype was the Team USA hoops that he played last season. And like we were all talking about how Cade was the man and what he was doing. Duren being ahead of schedule and like doing the things that he was doing, showing his ability to use his strength. Like they showed the ad what he had on Brandon Ingram where he's talking trash. Like that's what Pistons fans were expecting to see. And then Summer League comes up and he's catching the ball off the rebound, doing crossovers. Like I know that one play where he's like going between his legs and did the pull up from the elbow. Like that was cool, but that's not what he should be focusing on, especially when we didn't really see much of him catching it on the block and trying to like impose his strengths. Like he's doing things like the other things that we thought he was good at. Like we thought he was a decent enough ball handler. He showed the ability to pass at Memphis and in his rookie season, but both of those kind of regressed in his second year based on how Monty had him playing. So I think JB is going to do a much better job at, as he spoke to in his presser, using and utilizing the strengths of the guys that he has. I don't think he's going to play too much outside of that, and I think we're going to see a different kind of Jalen Duren this coming season.
Yeah, I don't think anything will be like. It seemed like last year they were just kind of seeing, like throwing stuff at the wall and seeing if it stuck, and nothing stuck last year.
Right.
Like there was a lot of just like, experimentation with like Cade, Ivy, especially Ivy, which we'll get into a little bit later, and Duren and Stewart. It's just like you got to play to the strengths, and I think JB knows that and he understands it. Obviously, he saw the Pistons 4 times a year, and he had to scout against them, so he knows what their strengths and what their weaknesses are. So I think getting a coach like him that is a little bit familiar with the Pistons, and he's been coaching in the NBA for a little bit, I think he'll know how to get them right, how to play to the strengths. No more of those dribbles at the top of the key, crazy fadeaways, like no more of that stuff. Like it's cool if you can hit it, but like you got to play to your strengths. And kind of to wrap up this trade talk thing, I think it's just a little bit of summer talk because it's July. We don't have like real basketball until like October, and I think you're gonna see like a lot of like potential summer talk from now until basketball season starts. Just wild stuff, trade scenarios, random trades, mock trades, because we miss basketball and we're just kind of filtering out the content until basketball season does start. But I think the Pistons ultimately keep Duren. To Stewart, I wouldn't be surprised that, as I did hear that they were taking calls on him all the way till like last season, like the Pelicans and the Thunder were trying to get him. So he obviously has value around the league. Yeah, Boston too. Like, wouldn't surprise me whatsoever because he does have a lot of value as an energy guy and a backup in a reserve role. But I honestly think Jalen Duren will probably be here. Isaiah Stewart, I'm not so sure.
Especially, we just talked about Klintman too. Like he's what Isaiah is, or he's. I don't want to prolong too much, but the point is, for what we saw with him, he seems better fitting as that stretch forward. Even if he's your backup, he seems way better fitting for the role that the Pistons are looking for at that power forward position. Like I just think he gives you way more flexibility. Like Beef Stew kind of limits them. We saw that he's not really much of a lob threat. And even people hype him up with the goon thing. Like, bro, the goon thing was him knocking over crowd control employees at LCA. He didn't even go put a hand on LeBron when he got knocked out like that. Like, I don't even put a lot of stock into that as his like the goon label. Like earn that if that's really who you are. And I didn't really see a whole lot of that. I feel like a lot of what he's done has been a little inflated. And again, if he's that name, one of those first names that are kind of packaged out, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, me either. I think he's a good player, but I think the way the Pistons use him just as being a spot up shooter, I think it's kind of as like he's more of a guy, like an energy guy, if you will, off the bench, bang down low. But obviously they didn't want to do that.